Hi, I hope you're mentally feeling well and I hope you're physically feeling well. If you don't want to have to search for my channel and you want to see my videos up and down your algorithm, like this video and subscribe. Um, we are told that the media or journalists are there to give us a informative view of what's going on in the world, going on in the country domestically, and what's going on in the world as well. And we're told that these news corporations, whether they be papers, whether they be news channels, that they're unbiased and they don't have no links to the government, and that they are actually informing us. Yeah, that's what we're supposed to believe. You live in a democracy, and the journalists and the news outlets are there to inform us, not brainwash or propagandize us. Me as a black person growing up, I had to learn the hard way that unfortunately the media is not independent and it is linked to the government. So, for example, let me give you an example. Africa. As someone with a Jamaican, like as someone growing up as a black person in England, I've never seen any positive views internally coming through the TV screen of Africa. I have 3 images of Africa growing up, and now as a full-grown man, of Africa from the unbiased news. That skinny babes, starving skinny babies with flies all over them. Yeah, where's it? Africans living in straw huts, and um, Africans on jeeps with with scars or around their head, and a machine gun in the other hand, screaming and shouting like they're about to kill or murder people. These are the 3, vivid images that I've repeatedly got from news. I have never, even though I know through learning up and meeting Africans and speaking to them, I've learned that there's beautiful infrastructure in Africa. There's shopping malls in Africa. There's high-rise buildings in Africa. There's beautiful housing complex in Africa, just like to the same exact quality as there is in the UK, England, America, Los Angeles, Miami, America, or Europe. So I don't trust. I don't trust BBC, BBC Two, ITV, Channel 4. Channel 4 is supposed to be the least worst out of them. But also these newspapers like the Telegraph, the Times, all these newspapers. I don't believe they're independent. I believe they are linked they are linked to the government. So Owen Jones is gonna basically prove that these companies, are linked to the government or the Western powers. And he's gonna show it. Cool. Let's go.
It is now mandatory to support Israel for journalists. It is now mandatory to support Israel for journalists at a British newspaper. You heard that right? I've just been leaked a letter sent by the new owner of the British newspaper, the Daily Telegraph. It's been acquired by a German-based media giant, and now its journalists are formally expected to support Israel. Now, the British Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, has cleared this takeover. It's by Axel Springer SE. Its CEO, Matthias Döpfner, has written to Telegraph staff outlining what he says is his commitment to the paper. He insists the values of the Telegraph and the publishing house founded by late tycoon Axel Springer, who is dubbed Germany's Rupert Murdoch, are aligned. They are, he says, freedom, free markets, individual freedom, and freedom of speech. He goes further. Axel Springer, the company, he explains, is guided by a clear editorial compass. Its employees are rooted in what he says are the essentials, core values to which we are firmly committed. There is, he adds, no such thing as neutral journalism, only journalism that is pluralistic, surprising, fair, and fact-based. Pluralistic, we'll see about that. And yet, having invoked freedom of speech as a foundational principle, he insists these essentials are not partisan, but rather define a socio-political framework within which maximum journalistic freedom and intellectual independence can flourish. Now, Doffner then sets out these essentials, and I'm going to read them out to you. Number one, we stand for freedom, freedom of expression, the rule of law, and democracy. Number two, we support the right of Israel to exist and oppose all forms of
Hold on. In your terms of service, you just bought a worldwide international newspaper of journalism. Why in your terms of terms of service is a country mentioned? I don't care if it's Israel. I don't care if it's Saudi Arabia. I don't care if it's what is it, Italy. I don't care if it's Russia. Why is it in your term? Why is it in your terms of service? Yeah, that in your essentials, yeah, in your policy mention. Why is it that the right of Israel to exist? What is you're here to objectively cover the news? Like you shouldn't be tied to you should be tied to any government or what I'm trying to say. You shouldn't say that it don't make sense. This is not the right position. This criteria should not be in there if you're a objective newspaper.
Semitism and intellectual independence can flourish. Now, Doffner then sets out these essentials, and I'm going to read them out to you. Number one, we stand for freedom, freedom of expression, the rule of law, and democracy. Number two, we support the right of Israel to exist and oppose all forms of anti-Semitism. Number three, we advocate the transatlantic alliance between the United States and Europe. Number four, we uphold the principles of a free market economy. Number five, we reject political and
This sounds more like a government. This sounds like the bylaws of a government rather than a journalistic newspaper.
the transatlantic alliance between the United States and Europe. Number four, we uphold the principles of a free market economy. And five, we reject political and religious extremism as well as forms of discrimination. Note where we support the right of Israel to exist sits. It sits at number two. It's second in those so-called essentials. Doffner says that editorial independence will be protected, including from pressure by politicians, celebrities, or advertisers. He says, I value debate in a spirit of pluralism and freedom of expression. But the description of the essentials is Orwellian. It is not reconcilable, surely, to argue that these tenets create the conditions for maximum journalistic freedom while simultaneously requiring adherence to a political position on a specific foreign state. Out of 193 United Nations member states, only one is singled out in this way. No state has the right to exist under international law. Peoples have a right to self-determination. Right denied in this case.
So basically, if you're a person, yeah, who joins the Telegraph and you want to be a reporter on the Jewish Palestinian basically situation, you're not going to be confident or comfortable working there because you already know that you're supposed to be on Israel's side. So you can't even say that, look, like you're not going to feel comfortable, to go out there and report, like even even if it's justly and mentioning on both sides, there's casualties and there's atrocities on both sides, even though one is a state with nuclear weapons, what I'm saying, and an army and an air force and stuff against, what I'm saying, like, like against civilians and stuff. But you can't, like, you just know that if you're humanitarian, that you can't work for this paper because the people that are, you know, apart from the terrorist actions of Hamas and so forth, yeah, you're not going to feel comfortable going there because they already align and lean on Israel's side. You know what I'm saying? Even if you're just for the innocent Palestinian women and men and stuff that are not, doing terrorist acts, you know? Because they have a right to defend themselves. The men and the women have a right to defend themselves. Obviously, not by killing innocent Jewish people and stuff, but like, so even if you're for the men and women protecting themselves, like physically against violence, yeah, um, by fighting back, like you're not gonna feel comfortable reporting on the situation because they lean left, like they lean not left, they lean towards Israel.
Israel's illegal occupation of Palestinian land by subjecting its people to apartheid, colonization, and genocide. Now, a Telegraph journalist put it to me bluntly, to be firmly told by our new parent company to be CEO that the second most important guiding principle is affirming the right of a country committing genocide and ethnic cleansing is more than a little concerning. It also raises the question of how any reporting from the paper can be considered factual if that is our core principle. As they know, this principle comes before any rejection of discrimination. Now, in practice, the phrase Israel's right to exist has been repeatedly deployed by Israel's cheerleaders across the West to justify Israel's crimes, from occupation and colonization to apartheid and now mass destruction in Gaza. It's also telling what is not said. The essentials do not prohibit racism in general, despite later rejection of all forms of discrimination. There is no explicit rejection of Islamophobia, for example, or anti-Arab racism. Instead, oppose all forms of anti-Semitism is used directly with support the right of Israel to exist. That conflation matters, because we know that defenders of Israel have repeatedly blurred the line between anti-Semitism and opposition to the actions of the Israeli state. So how exactly might Axel Springer SE interpret oppose all forms of anti-Semitism? There are very strong clues, let's put it that way. The late Axel Springer, so the mogul who used to run this company, himself declared, "It is the task of our generation to stand firmly by Israel's side, even if this causes difficulties for our policies elsewhere." He further added, "The country does not need encouragement, but advocacy, wherever and whenever it can be provided, in the European community, in the United Nations, in diplomatic relations, at work, in the family." He describes this as a German duty. In June 2021, when employees complained about the Israeli flag being raised at company headquarters, Matthias Döpfner responded, "I'm being very frank with you. A person who has an issue with an Israeli flag being raised for 1 week here after anti-Semitic demonstrations should look for a new job." He was referring to demonstrations against Israel's assault on Gaza that May. In October 2023, a Lebanese employee at Welt TV, part of the Axel Springer empire, was dismissed. He said he challenged the outlet's pro-Israel positions. Axel Springer SE refused to comment on what it said was individual personnel matters. In an internal email which was leaked that year, Döpfner reportedly summarized his...
So much for democracy and the freedom of speech, yeah, and the freedom of expression. It's a whole load of crap.
Springer SE refused to comment on what it said was individual personnel matters. In an internal email which was leaked that year, Döpfner reportedly summarized his political worldview with the phrase Zionism über alles, Zionism above all. He has penned repeated pro-Israel polemics. Will we stand with Israel against the enemies of freedom despite the risks, or will we allow fear and opportunism to prevail? He wrote in October 2023, demanding massive, unstinting political, financial, and military support. On a podcast with his employees, Doffler claimed a majority on Instagram, on other social media, and in particular on TikTok, took sides for the Hamas's actions. He argued that an almost global wave of anti-Semitism suddenly showed its ugly face, which he described as a shock, despite knowing, as he says, that it is here, there, well hidden, or presented in a politically correct manner as anti-Zionism or wokeism or whatever. And he said something deeply revealing about TikTok. He said, concretely, more than 4 million posts until today have been published under the hashtag of #FreePalestine or other kind of pro-Hamas topics. And only 50,000 something, 53,000 posts basically standing by Israel. Free Palestine, he argued, was a kind of pro-Hamas.
Crazy.
When Israel launched its first war on Iran last June, Doffner declared it was surprising that Israel has not been celebrated worldwide for its historic, extremely precise and necessary strike. Instead, he claimed the public response is dominated by anti-Israel propaganda. Intelligence and precision of Israel's actions are not admired, but are instead used here and there to perpetuate blatantly anti-Semitic stereotypes. This attitude is characterized not only by racist undertones, but also by a strange self-forgetfulness. In other words, he directly conflated critique of Israel's war with anti-Semitism. A few months ago, he quoted claims about atrocities committed on October 7th, which included a first responder testified before the Knesset, the Israeli legislature, that he had seen the severed skulls of 3 children. The claims that children were beheaded have been comprehensively debunked. But not to write that justified criticism of decisions made by an Israeli government is mixed with deep-rooted hatred of Jews, and that as a result, instead of an obvious global wave of compassion and solidarity, a global wave of cold-heartedness and increasingly aggressive anti-Semitism has emerged. He's not engaging there in the war crimes committed by Israel or by the genocide that a consensus of genocide scholars has established has been committed, including by multiple Israeli scholars of genocide. You know, it's this idea that, you know, what he says, cold-heartedness. I mean, the cold-heartedness is that's being objected to is towards the mass slaughter of countless Palestinians and Lebanese people, for that matter, and other victims of the Israeli state. Nothing there at all, but instead just talking about this in the context of anti-Semitism. Now, the piece further criticised the German government, Israel's most loyal European defender, for massively restricting arms sales to Israel. Tellingly, he said that decision means that from now on, unconditional support for Israel's right to exist is effectively subject to conditions. So we can see there how he's using the concept of Israel's right to exist to attack, in this case, the right-wing German government curtailing arms sales on the basis of war crimes being committed by the Israeli state and the legal obligation on states not to provide weapons for war crimes. I mean, the German state has, nonetheless, I mean, it's up to its neck in complicity with Israel's war crimes, but you can see here how the concept of the right to exist is being used. He also described the recognition of Palestinian statehood as a reward for the barbarism of October 7th. Last October, Al Jazeera published an investigation into German tabloid Bild, a cornerstone of Axel Springer's SE, headlined "The Story of Israel's Propaganda Machine, Specializing in Anti-Palestinian Incitement." Al Jazeera reported that the newspaper had suggested that a Palestinian journalist killed by Israel was a terrorist, that it had denied famine in Gaza, but it published a lengthy report it claimed had been found on the computer of the late Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Transpired that the document was old, not authored by Sinwar, and had reportedly been leaked at Benjamin Netanyahu's office. The newspaper, reported Al Jazeera, had also consistently demonized pro-Gaza demonstrators in Germany, labeling them as mobs, Israel haters, and anti-Semites. Now, Bild has described student protesters in the United States as Juden Hasser student, Jew hater students, even though those protesters include Jewish students. We should also note the atmosphere in Germany in general, in which anti-Semitism is widely conflated with the critique of Israel and its crimes, to the extent that Jewish people there have been repeatedly denounced, deplatformed, and arrested. Alex Springer SE's outlets have repeatedly singled out Jewish Christians of Israel. The Welt's newspaper argued that Jewish American photographer Nan Goldin misused the opening of her retrospective at the New and National Gallery to level serious accusations against Germany and Israel, supported by pro-Palestinian activists. Another article attacked Deborah Feldman, a Jewish American German writer, who's spoken out about how the German government ignores the way, as she puts it, dissenting Jews in Germany are being thrown under the bus as in Israel. A piece in Bild said of her political views are close to conspiracy theories. In Germany, one is not allowed to say what one wants. The police are infiltrated by right-wing extremists, and the Federal Republic is preventing peace in the Middle East. Anti-Semitic subtext because it obeys the all-powerful Israel lobby. This is roughly the worldview of the author, who years ago had a Netflix hit with her autobiographically inspired bestseller, Orthodox. In other words, falsely suggesting that a Jewish writer holds anti-Semitic views because of her opinions about Israel. Now, last October, the Israeli President Isaac Herzog presented Daphne with the Israeli Presidential Medal of Honor, alongside Miriam Adelson, the Israeli business tycoon who donated $100 million plus to Donald Trump's 2024 presidential campaign. Israel's justification for Daphne's award was that he is a brave voice against anti-Semitism and a staunch supporter of Israel. He's demonstrated unprecedented solidarity with Israel during the current war. Now, President Herzog of Israel incited genocide against the Palestinians back in October 2023 when he declared of Gaza, it's an entire nation out there that is responsible. It is not true. This rhetoric about civilians who are not aware and not involved, it is absolutely not true. Now, notably, Axel Springer SE has a business empire in Israel that includes acquiring Israeli classifieds platform Yad 2 for 165 million euros over a decade ago. Yad 2 is involved in Israel's property market and reportedly advertises properties in illegal settlements in the illegally occupied West Bank. Now, to be clear, the Telegraph has already got a partisan pro-Israel orientation, publishing multiple pieces justifying Israel's genocidal onslaught against Gaza and monstering those who stood against it. This takeover embeds pro-Israel bias into the newspaper's very fabric. Its new owners are zealously pro-Israel and have repeatedly conflated anti-Semitism with critique of Israel. They claim that freedom of speech is a core value. The truth is that Israel supporters in the West have launched the biggest assault on free speech since the height of McCarthyism. And we can see where the Telegraph's new owners stand on that. Please like and subscribe, leave your thoughts in your comments. Help us take on a media which has justified Israel's crimes and genocide at patreon.com/Owen Jones 84. You make all the work we do here possible. You can order my book, The Fall of the West, which is out in a few months. The Fall of the West, how they really lost it. Why have they lost it? Which explains the real reasons for the massive crisis in embroiling, well, the West, but also the world as a consequence of the catastrophic decisions of Western elites. So yeah, like, subscribe, leave your thoughts in your comments, share the video. I'll speak to you in a bit.
Okay, guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Like, subscribe, and if you want to, financially support.